All right. Hello. This is Dr. Goff. I am so sorry that I have been gone all week long. But maybe you can tell from my voice and just listening to me that I am struggling big time. But I will definitely be back on Thursday if you're listening to this on Wednesday. Um, if you're listening to it later, then you've already seen me again, and that was irrelevant. So I'm going to keep going. I'm going to give you a quick test review, and I'm going to go ahead and warn you that this is the ugliest slide presentation that I've ever made. So just heads up on that. All right. I just wanted to put something together really quick and make sure that you had everything that you need in order to be prepared for this test on Friday. So, the first thing that we have 4 learning targets for this test. The first one is this: I can explain the early relationships between the English settlers and the indigenous peoples or Indians in North America, including differing views on ownership, use of land, and the conflicts between them. Okay, so here's what all that learning target will entail: Roanoke, Jamestown, Plymouth, the French, Spanish, and Dutch colonies. So we know that Roanoke, Jamestown, and Plymouth are all British. They were all from England. So we also want to know about the French, the Spanish, and the Dutch. And last but not least, why? Why did each of these people come to America? What was their goal in coming to America? So first thing, and again, I know these slides are hideous, but just trying to get all the information done. And if you hear snoring in the background, my dog, Katie Main, is laying beside of me, snoring away. So Roanoke, remember that is the lost colony. They did not succeed. Remember that was the story that we learned about a few weeks ago where they came from England. They settled there. They thought they were going to find gold and get rich. They did not use their supplies very well. They did not work or try to grow their own food. They were just going to depend on England to keep sending them things. But then they got tied up. The ships got tied up in England, couldn't come back with supplies for a few years. And then by the time they got back, these people were not there anymore. Jamestown is a different story. Jamestown is England's first successful colony, but they also had a very hard time. Make sure that you know what the word charter means. So a charter is basically it's permission, it's the money from the government. So it's money from England given to a company and saying, okay, you can go over there and start a settlement and we get some of your profit, right? So a charter is permission from the government, from the king, to go over and start a settlement and start to colonize. So the people in Jamestown, they wanted to search for gold all the time, didn't work, just like the people at Roanoke. John Smith changed that. He was the president of their settlement and told them they had to work. In fact, his famous quote is, if you don't work, you don't eat. And things were going okay for a little while, but then John Smith got injured and had to go back to England. And so when he went back, the people kind of fell into their old habits. Winter came, got really bad. They also had a really poor relationship with the Native Americans at this point. So if they went out to look for food, they were mostly attacked by Native Americans. So they were forced to stay within their settlement area. And again, not a lot of food, starving time. This is when they would eat the leather from their boots. They would eat pretty much anything, even each other at times. And the history records say that only 60 of 500 remained after that winter. So, not in good shape. These people were ready to leave. But then another ship from England came, and that had John Rolfe on it, and he brought tobacco. Hang on just a second. Excuse me. So, John Rolfe brought tobacco. This is a cash crop. A cash crop is not a tree that grows dollar bills, although that would be awesome. A cash crop is a crop, a plant that you grow that's going to bring in money. The opposite of that, or not the opposite, but that doesn't need to be confused with crops that you're going to eat. Cash crops means you're going to grow in abundance and you're going to sell that abundance to make money. So he brought tobacco. Tobacco seeds were limited to the Spanish, but somehow he got them. Still to this day, we don't know how, but he got tobacco seeds, grew tobacco. Excuse me. Goodness. Africans also came to Jamestown. At first, they were indentured servants. Make sure you know that an indentured servant is a worker, but they are promised land after they work for so long. So you may come and work for 5 years, and then after 5 years of labor and not owning anything, basically 5 years of slavery per se, then you get to own your own land. So at first that was the system. But then they needed more and more people to come. So then they just started bringing Africans and they used them as slaves. They didn't promise them anything in return for their work. The success of Jamestown came from tobacco and slaves. All right. And again, you need to know the big reason why the people in Jamestown were there was to bring money back to Britain to get rich. So that was the key for that one. Plymouth was different. They came for religious freedom. So they didn't come because they wanted to find gold or get rich and send money back to England. They just came because they felt like the church was too pushy, that the church was smothering them in England. And so they wanted to come and settle so that they could worship however they chose. We know that up in the north, the soil is not good. The climate was not good for growing food. And so they also went through a period of insane struggle where they were starving as well. So they ended up teaming up with the Native Americans, and this is what led to their survival. If you remember on the video, teaming up with the Native Americans meant that this religious group of people, this people that said that they believed in God and believed in Jesus, ended up murdering a bunch of Native Americans with their guns. But they did that so that they could form an alliance with another Native American tribe. And in return, that tribe helped them grow food and ultimately led to their survival. So that's Plymouth. Last but not least, we have France. Remember that France came to North America for the fur trade. And so the Native Americans didn't feel as threatened by France because they weren't there like claiming a bunch of land and growing a bunch of crops and using up a ton of resources. They were there mostly for trapping, fur trapping. And then they also traded with the Native Americans a lot. That's why later on, when we have a war between France and England, the Native Americans are going to largely side with the French because they liked them a lot more. Spain stayed to the south. In the United States, really during this time, Spain was in Florida, but that's about it. So we don't hear much about Spain for a long while, at least in U.S. history. And then the Dutch claimed New Amsterdam, and then you know that the British eventually named that New York when they took it over. Okay? All right. Next learning target is making sure you can label this map. Mr. Stanley said y'all were struggling yesterday or Tuesday whenever you did this map. So make sure that you study this. Couple tips on how to study it. I would look at, I would memorize which colonies are in which region. So here you see that there are 4 colonies in New England. There's New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut. There are 4 in the middle colonies: New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware. And then the last 5 are in the southern colonies. Here's the thing. I am not going to give you a list. I'm not going to give you a list of states or colonies. Okay, so you've got to memorize these. You got to know them off the top of your head. You got to be able to look at this and say, oh yeah, that's Virginia. Or look at this and say, yeah, Rhode Island, that's the smallest one. Okay, so make sure that you know these. This is also going to help you on a lot of your other test questions, because there might be a question that says a student or a child from this colony would be likely to go to school. Well, we know that up in New England is where they went to school, and so the answer might be Massachusetts. If you know that Massachusetts is in New England, then you know that Massachusetts is going to be your answer.